And there's no end to the sniping on energy policy. Prime Minister in waiting, Peter Dutton, has promised the removal of the GST from energy bills and a potential royal commission into power companies. But with gas instrumental in setting the price of electricity, one analyst argues the best way to bring down power bills on the East Coast is to reserve some of the gas that's currently being exported. Here's Carrington Clark.
Power policy is key to this political power play.
Now, rising electricity prices is causing families distress, which is why cheaper power has always been our #1 priority.
On Monday, the Prime Minister dumped any action on emissions, but now promises tough power market intervention to drive down prices. The man who is circling for his job agrees there's a problem.
I believe very strongly that we can win the election if we get the policies and the message right about lowering electricity prices.
But he's outlined a very different solution, a royal commission into the energy companies and a $7.4 billion tax cut.
I think we should, as a first step, take the GST off electricity for households. I think that is important for pensioners, for self-funded retirees, for people that are finding it difficult to pay the bills each month.
And is that policy on the run from your leadership rival?
Well, it's certainly very expensive.
But David-Llewelyn-Smith has cooked up a different solution. He says if you want lower power bills, gas is what matters.
Because gas is used for some baseload power and peaking power in the national electricity market, it's quite often, in fact very often, the marginal price setter. So if you raise the gas price, you automatically raise the electricity price, and that is what has happened in Australia.
Gas prices were relatively stable on the East Coast before skyrocketing from 2009, and so too did electricity prices. The gas price rapidly increased to match the price in Asia as Australia started exporting huge amounts of gas. And this week on The Business, Australia's biggest gas producer said prices will continue to rise.
We're already seeing forward pricing for an October delivery of LNG into Asia being significantly higher than where it was at this time last year.
David-Llewelyn-Smith says he has the answer for lower prices here, gas reservation on the East Coast.
Every other energy producer on earth does this, and Australia is crazy if we don't do it as well.
And one state already does this. West Australia has a gas reservation policy in place with prices around half what they are in the east.
In the short term, the gas reservation policy has had an impact in keeping West Australian prices low.
But Dr Bethune is not convinced it would work on the East Coast.
But West Australia is just a single state, whereas you've got 5 states on the East Coast. I can't see why the Queenslanders would want to reserve their gas to supply New South Wales or Victoria, where you're not allowed to drill, rather than the Queenslanders exporting the gas.
The other major difference is that while West Australia locked reservation into contracts before projects begun, gas reservation on the East Coast would involve the government imposing new rules on gas exporters already locked into export contracts.
If these projects to some extent were overbuilt, which they were, and some of that capital was misallocated, which it was, and that has created the gas shortage, then they should wear some of the cost for the redress.
But it could come at a big cost.
If you approach it with a kind of hammer, then there is certainly huge sovereign risk issues. It's easy to say sovereign risk, but the reality is the most likely outcome there would be overseas investors and gas buyers taking international legal action against the Commonwealth Government.
But when a Liberal government is threatening to break up power companies, the idea no longer seems too far-fetched.